Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Kyle, for you know, providing us with this platform today to talk about SWTSIE. And want to thank you all for signing on today. Across the state of Pennsylvania. Appreciate the large enrollment or registries today, and definitely want to give you all an opportunity for Q&A. We have some pointed questions that we'll be asking our guest speaker for today, Matt Bailey, Achieva Family Trust Administrator, Supervisor, and I do want to give a high-level overview of what SWTSIE is. Definitely a hot topic, across the state of Pennsylvania. Although, SWTSIE has been awarded in 13 states across the nation. SWTSIE stands for Subminimum Wage to Competitive Integrated Employment. There will not be a test on this today. The statewide initiative seeks to reduce subminimum wage employment and enhance opportunities for people with disabilities who are at risk of a subminimum wage position. So, subminimum wage positions are, also, considered 14Cs, part of large workshop environments where employers, again, are able to pay under minimum wage and based off of the productivity of the person. So the two agencies who have been awarded the grant in Pennsylvania are Achieva, awarded SWTSIE Grant Western Pennsylvania, and then Kencrest and CIS was awarded a SWTSIE grant in Eastern Pennsylvania. So it gives you a little bit of background, but we also have partners to include OVR, Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, ODP, both large funders, Office of Developmental Programs, PA Family Network, which is really valued partner that supports a person in the context of the family. So lots of family supports, and of course Achieva. SWTSIE's purpose: increasing competitive integrated employment and other quality outcomes for people who have disabilities and are either earning subminimum wage or in jeopardy of it. The time frame of the grant was 22 October 1st, 22 through September 30th, 27. So that's 5 years. Increasing employer commitments to inclusive hiring is one of the objectives or purposes, and providing transformative support to increase competitive integrated employment. Through what we call our INVEST project in PA, we engage in what's called an IRT, Integrated Resource Team meeting, right out of the gate when somebody enrolls for SWTSIE and become part of the INVEST project. And this really helps not only identify competitive integrated employment goals, but also identify gaps that may act as barriers for a person who has a disability and is looking for competitive employment. So one of the gaps that can be a large barrier is if a person is making so much money that it could affect their benefits. So a lot of people fear that, and that's where Matt Bailey comes in. And I'm going to skip any more overview of Invest. If you have any questions, please reach out to me directly. Amber Westwood is the point of contact as well. She's just not available this week. Chris will put her name and contact information in the chat. So if you know of somebody who's interested in enrolling in Invest, who would be a good candidate for SWTSIE, or is just interested in learning more, you can reach out to her directly, and as well as me. So I'm gonna go ahead and introduce Matt, and Matt said he has pretty much a 4-hour presentation for today, and he's gonna condense that into about 20 minutes, worth of overview, and then we'll do the Q&A. So I'm going to mute my microphone. Matt, you're on. Thank you for being here today.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for the introduction. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Matt Bailey, and I am a Benefits and Trust Administration Supervisor with the Achieve a Family Trust. So today I'm going to share my PowerPoint here. Today we're going to focus on benefits counseling and Social Security benefits. Now, with benefits counseling, there's a lot of benefits that come into play. I'm going to focus on the two on the major benefits, which are the Social Security benefits. And then from there, I can answer any questions regarding Medicaid or any other, waiver or any other benefits that might come into play with benefits counseling. So give me 1 second here. I'm going to put my slideshow. So just real quick, the Achieve a Family Trust has 4 specialty departments. That includes the Family Trust, which administers and monitors special needs trusts. So special needs trusts are options for individuals with disabilities who want to shelter resources where it does not count against their means-tested government benefit. So if their personal accounts, payee accounts, checking accounts go over a certain amount, depending on their means-tested benefit, they have the option to shelter those assets into a special needs trust. That also comes with the future planning component where mom and dad, grandma, grandpa, a friend, anyone can leave monies for their loved one with a disability without worrying about those assets counting as a resource towards their benefit eligibility. There's the Employment and Benefits Counseling Department, which I oversee, which includes a general work incentive planning. We'll go into a little bit of that later. There's the residual grant fund. So the residual grant fund is for anyone in the state of Pennsylvania with a disability can apply for this grant. These grants cover camper recreation, assistive technology, products or supplies, furniture. There's a lot of different items these grants can cover. I encourage everyone, the website is down below, to take a look at the residual grant fund and see if there's something you could potentially be eligible to receive. And it all kind of ties together with the education and outreach department. They're kind of out there promoting our programs. That includes the future planning component, meeting with families based on them wanting to provide for their loved ones with disabilities in the future and not wanting to jeopardize any, means tested essential government benefits. There is the Achievement Family Trust's counseling team. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this, but I am a accredited work incentive practitioner through Cornell University. So I am able to work with individuals with disabilities who are working or either thinking about working, understand how that employment or earned income will impact their means tested government benefits. So what we're going to cover today, I'm just going to go into a brief overview of what benefits counseling is, and then we're going to talk about Social Security benefits and the work incentives available. So there is that fear, can I work and receive Social Security benefits? And you absolutely can. There are numerous incentives out there, some that are automatically applied, some we have to identify and apply, but there are work incentives available to individuals to be able to maintain their Social Security benefits. These are the big items we're covering today. Like I said, this also ties into several other benefits. I will be talking about certain categories of medical assistance today, but if there's any other benefits we can discuss during the Q&A session, we can absolutely do that, or I can come back and do just a training on those particular items. So what is benefits counseling? Second here. So the goal of benefits counseling is to provide comprehensive assistance to individuals with disabilities to maintain their essential government benefits while working. Many individuals with disabilities want to work, but are worried there will be a negative effect on their benefits, including their health care. When it comes to Social Security benefits, it takes a long time to onboard onto a benefit, whether that be Social Security disability, SSDI, supplemental security income, or the childhood disability benefit. You're talking several months of an application process and then potentially several years if it goes through all the appeal processes. So once somebody onboards onto that benefit, is entitled to that benefit, there's that concern they're not going to do anything to lose that benefit. So when work comes up or they want to work, the recipients of these Social Security benefits, there is that immediate fear, whether it be their fear or a family member's fear, that this employment is going to impact the benefit. Will it impact the benefit? Yes, potentially, but that is not immediate. There are checks and balances in place. Any type of benefit you're receiving has incentives identified or already worked in. So if you are working, you will not have to worry about immediately losing your benefit on day one if you're working. So that's kind of what we do. We give that individual that information so they can make an informed choice regarding work. So work incentive planning in a nutshell is an individual with a disability is seeking employment or they are already employed and they're receiving government benefits. Some of these government benefits are means tested. They have income and resource caps. So we help them understand how this earned income potentially impacts those government benefits. They can make an informed choice at that moment. We can break down the benefits they're receiving and explain what they can anticipate as they move forward through the employment process, and they can take that information, make that choice, whether they're receiving a new position, an increase in hours, or a promotion. These are all items we can cover to help them understand what can occur once they start receiving that earned income. And then we identify and apply work incentives. Some work incentives happen automatically. Social Security has them built in. Some we have to help identify and apply. So that's kind of what benefits counseling does. We help identify and apply the work incentives, and then we give that individual the option to choose what they want to do moving forward. Then we assist with the Social Security overpayment appeal and waiver. So unfortunately, anytime Social Security and employment mix, there is the potential for the overpayment. What we try to do is minimize the potential of a large overpayment, or we take a look at whether or not the individual was responsible for that overpayment, and we help them appeal that piece. But anytime you're working and Social Security benefits are involved, yeah, there's a potential for an overpayment there, but you have options. So what benefits to consider when working or planning to work? I listed just, and these are not all of them, but these are the heavy hitters here. And the three we're going to focus on today are in bold, and there's supplemental security income, Social Security Disability Insurance, or SSDI, the childhood disability benefit, or that's also known as the disabled adult child benefit, medical assistance. There are various categories of medical assistance that have specific income caps and resource caps. Supplemental assistance nutrition assistance program, SNAP. So any income in the picture will, potentially reduce your SNAP benefits, but we will help identify, any of those exclusions that DHS will apply, such as rent and certain utilities that you're paying. HUD housing, if you had receiving HUD housing, income in the picture will, increase your rent payment. Waiver services. Waiver services is a form of Medicaid, has a resource and income guideline that we would have to be mindful of when we are working with these individuals that are working and receiving, these benefits. And then there's veterans benefits. So that includes veterans pension and compensation benefits. If you're working, that can impact your disability rating, which can impact in turn your compensation. So just real quick, we're going to talk about Social Security disability benefits, and this includes Title II and Title 16 benefits. It helps to kind of review the benefits first before explaining the work incentives. I didn't want to just jump into the work incentives without kind of giving a background on the particular benefit. I'd like to add this into the slides, the disability definition that Social Security uses when onboarding individuals onto these disability benefits. And Social Security defines disability as the inability to do any substantial gainful activity by reason of any medically determinable physical or mental impairment, which can be expected to result in death or which has lasted or can be expected to last for a continuous period of not less than 12 months. So that's the Social Security definition that they are using for all of these disability benefits that you can possibly onboard to, receive. When applying, that's kind of their the definition that they're using. It applies to both Title II and Title 16 programs. The impairment, duration, and any work limitations are the claimant's burden to prove. So there are disabilities that when Social Security is reviewing kind of get you through the door relatively quickly, compassion and allowances, depending on the nature of the disability. There are several of those. Everybody else kind of has to prove any work limitations that are there or any impairments that are there when they're applying for Social Security benefits, and that's why that medical documentation is so important. It tells a story. So there are two types of Social Security benefits. That is Title II benefits and Title 16 benefits. Title II benefits, we are specifically focusing on Social Security disability or disability insurance benefits, or SSDI, and the childhood disability benefit, also known as the disabled adult child benefit, or DAC. So Social Security retirement benefits fall under Title II, widows benefits fall under Title II, but in terms of work incentives, we're going to focus on these two today. Title 16 is Supplemental Security Income, that is SSI. That is the only benefit under that particular heading we will cover. So what is Social Security disability insurance or disability insurance benefit? That is an insurance-based disability program that provides cash benefits to insured workers who become disabled and unable to engage in work activity producing income above a certain annual amount. So in order to be reviewed for Social Security disability benefits, you must meet that SSA definition of disability. It may be your burden to prove work limitations to onboard onto this benefit, but that's where the medical documentation is essential. That's why they pull all of that documentation. They go back several years. They want it to tell a story. They want to see, to verify the disability, but see the limitations as well, especially in terms of working. It's an entitlement benefit and it's based on your work history. So that is your FICA, your federal payroll tax contributions, or your self-employment contributions, depending on your situation. And you must have insured status as a worker. So what does that mean? Insured status are based on credits or quarters of coverage. I kind of outlined there what you would need in each credit to get, to count as a credit, the amount you'd have to earn. So there are 4 credits in a year. You'd have to earn $1,810 in that credit, in that quarter, to count as a credit towards insured status. Your monthly payments are based on FICA contributions, not economic need. This isn't like SSI. This is an entitlement benefit. It's not a means-tested benefit, so there's no resource limit to become eligible for Social Security disability benefits. However, there may be another means-tested benefit in the picture, such as medical assistance or waiver, that individual will have to be mindful of. But to onboard on the Social Security disability, you can have money in the bank without it impacting your eligibility for SSDI. Again, it's an entitlement benefit, but there may be another benefit in the picture that we need to be mindful of. So that individual for Social Security disability insurance must either not be working or working but earning less than substantial gainful activity. So substantial gainful activity is going to come into play while we're reviewing SSDI and the childhood disability benefit. That is ultimately what we're looking at here. So that they don't look at substantial gainful activity right away. So, but it's something to keep in mind as you are working and receiving disability benefits, that eventually you are going to be reviewed for this SGA limit, and that will determine whether or not you qualify for a disability payment moving forward. So what is substantial gainful activity, or SGA? Social Security uses the term SGA to describe a level of work activity and earnings. This work activity involves doing significant physical or mental activities, or a combination of both. So to be eligible for disability benefits, a person must be unable to engage in SGA. This includes work performed by the claimant filing for benefits or by an individual already entitled to benefits. So we're going to focus on the latter here. So you have to be, substantial gainful activity comes into play when you're applying for Social Security benefits. And then once you receive it, they eventually will monitor you for that SGA threshold, which in this case for 2025, is $1,620 a month for a non-blind individual and $2,700 a month for a blind individual. SGA is looking at only earned income. They're not looking at unearned income. So earned income is income received through personal effort. They're only looking at your employment, and those employment earnings are what count towards that SGA. Social Security disability insurance and Medicare. So once you receive Social Security disability insurance for 2 years, that's 24 cash payments, you automatically qualify for Medicare, even if you are under the age of 65. So it's automatic. So you'll receive that paperwork as you approach that 24 payment to enroll you in Medicare, in the Medicare plan. And like the SSDI cash benefit, Medicare does not have a resource limit. It's an entitlement benefit. However, there may be another benefit in the picture that the individual is receiving that they may have to take into consideration as they are working. So along the lines of the Social Security disability benefit is the childhood disability benefit. And so in this case, it's also known as the adult disabled child benefit, or DAC benefit, disabled adult child. There's several different terminologies for it, but we're seeing more of the childhood disability benefit here, the CDB. The qualifications are similar for Social Security disability benefits. You must have that definition of a disability, but here it kind of changes where you have to be unmarried. So here, or 18 years of older, you're not claiming on your own work history. You're going to claim on mom and dad's history if they meet certain criteria. So if you apply for Social Security disability benefits, but you don't have the work orders or you don't have the work history to qualify on your own benefit payment, so you don't have enough for a cash payment of SSDI, you can apply for the childhood disability benefit and then apply on your parents' work history. But there are two criteria for this. You must have had a disability onset prior to the age of 22, and the parent must either be disabled themselves and collecting a benefit, retired and collecting a benefit, or deceased. And if that's the case, you could potentially qualify for a CDB benefit under, which is under the Title II heading, if you do not have the work quarters to qualify for your own SSDI payment. So the important criteria here is unmarried, 18 years of older, and you must have had a disability onset prior to the age of 22, with mom or dad either disabled themselves and collecting a benefit, retired and collecting a benefit, or deceased and collecting a benefit. Now, what usually happens if mom and dad retire, Social Security, then once they that mom and dad receive that retirement benefit, they know that there is someone on the record, someone in the family that is receiving, it could be SSI or not receiving a benefit at all, and then that's when you kind of get the ball rolling to jump onto that disabled adult child benefit. So substantial gainful activity rules apply, and we're looking at the ongoing monitoring of that. So that threshold, once you begin working, there's no resource limit. And again, for the childhood disability benefit, once you receive that childhood disability benefit for 2 years, which is 24 cash payments, you can qualify for Medicare even if you are under the age of 65. There is a marriage consideration with a childhood disability benefit. I do always put this in there. If you are, you do qualify for a CDB, then you must marry another Title II recipient to maintain that CDB coverage. So if you, are getting the CDB benefit, you have to marry someone else also receiving the benefit, retirement benefit, disability benefit, in order to maintain the benefit, or else you can lose that benefit if you marry someone who is not receiving a Title II benefit. If you're receiving supplemental security income, which we'll cover here later, that means tested benefit prior to CDB eligibility, meaning you're receiving SSI, a parent retires, a parent passes away, or starts collecting a disability benefit, Social Security is going to review you for the CDB benefit. It's going to be a more substantial payment. You're claiming on someone's work history now. So one or two things is going to happen with the SSI, because SSI is a means tested benefit. Any other income in the picture is going to impact it. You'll become dual eligible. If the CDB benefit's low enough, you can have SSI and the CDB benefit, or the CDB benefit is going to completely cancel out the SSI. One concern here is that the individual loses the SSI in this regard, is that they'll lose the Medicaid coverage that automatically comes with the SSI. But there is a loophole in this instance to maintain your medical assistance coverage. If you should be evaluated for eligible for a CDB benefit, lose the SSI, you can maintain your Medicaid coverage ongoing if you still have an disability, and if you remain under $2,000 in resources, which will cover that under the SSI piece. But there is, that is a concern with individuals who are reviewed for childhood disability benefit. I'm receiving SSI. I'm now losing my SSI to the CDB. What happens to my medical coverage that comes with the SSI? You can still maintain it. So there is the concern about working and receiving Title II Social Security benefits. And that comes with, can I work and continue to receive this without penalty? Will I be reduced day one? And that is a common misconception that it's going to be immediate, any impact on these benefits. There are work incentives available for Title II and benefits. So what we're going to do is I'm going to kind of overview the main ones here. There are a lot of work incentives out there, but I'm going to cover kind of the main work incentives here, or the work incentives that are automatically applied. So in this case, we're going to cover the trial work period, substantial gainful activity, SGA, which we talked a little bit about earlier, the extended period of eligibility, impairment related work expenses, or otherwise known as IRWEs, or expedited reinstatement. So Social Security, when you are receiving a childhood disability benefit or a Social Security disability benefit, the month you begin working and you're receiving that benefit, triggers what they call a trial work period. Social Security is not going to immediately review you for substantial gainful activity. That you got to kind of work up to that point. So here's where a misconception is quelled that immediately beginning, if you start working, you're going to lose your Social Security disability benefits. That's not the case. You got to get through your trial work period. Social Security is testing your ability to work and still receive benefits. So there's a different number that they use. It's not an SGA limit like we talked about, that 1,620. This is a different number. This is 1,160 to be considered a trial work period month in 2025. So if you get $1,160 a month in earned income, that counts as a trial work period. Now, trial work period is a 9-month period. You get 9 months to work without losing your benefits. So they're testing, again, you're testing the waters. And this is a 60-month rolling period. You don't have to get them all consecutive. They could be spaced apart. But once you hit that 9-month period is when they'll begin to review you for SGA. So you can still receive your benefit if you were over that trial work period amount. So that if you're over that $1,160, you're still receiving your Social Security benefit. They're just looking to get you 9 of those months before they then begin to review you for substantial gainful activity, because they're not reviewing you for SGA yet. This is the testing period. You get 9 of those months to work without your benefits being impacted. Once that trial work month starts, that clock ticks, I kind of have an example here where I put down how, to give you an example, how they don't have to be consecutive. So with January to July of 2025, I put gross earnings down for this, scenario, and you could see that the trial work month periods don't have to be consecutive, but they're still going to count them even if you have a space in between. So in this case, the individual in January meets the trial work period limit, and that counts as the first month, but they're under the next several months, but they don't hit it again until June when they're at 1,160. So that counts as their second one. You get 9 of these before they start reviewing you for substantial gainful activity. So it could take a while where you're getting your benefit without, without anything happening with your benefit, without any cessation, before you're reviewed for the substantial gainful activity. So once you hit now 9 trial work period months is when the extended period of eligibility begins. And this is where Social Security begins to review you for substantial gainful activity. So you had your 9 trial work period months. The immediate month following the 9th trial work period month begins your extended period of eligibility review. This is 36 months consecutive. This is back to back. This is not a rolling period. This is for 36 months. They are going to review you for, now we're at that SGA limit. So we're looking at that work activity limit of 1,620. That's when that comes into play. So if your countable income is over that 1,620, you're not going to receive your benefit. It's going to trigger what they call a cessation. It's not a termination at this point. It's a cessation. You're just not going to receive your Social Security disability check. If you are under 1,620, you're going to continue to receive your Title II benefit without issue. So you can continue to receive it and work if you're under that SGA amount without any sort of cessation. If you are over, that's when it triggers that cessation period. Again, they're saying cessation, it's not a termination. It's just stopping. You're just not going to qualify for it in this 36-month period if you're over SGA. So you're either going to get your benefit payment or not, depending on that SGA amount, or depending on what you're earning. Your Medicare eligibility that you now receive after 24 cash payments with Social Security disability or childhood disability benefit is not going to be impacted during the extended period of eligibility, but you will need to pay your Part B premium for the cessation months. A lot of individuals have their Part B premium come out of their Social Security disability payment each month. If you don't qualify for a cash payment that month or due to a cessation, then you'll have to make other arrangements to pay that Part B premium. But again, the extended period of eligibility, we now kind of graduated into an SGA review after the trial work period. 36 consecutive months. If you're over SGA, cessation. You get no check. If you're under SGA, you'll continue to get your benefit check without a cessation. So when does a benefit termination occur with Title II benefits? So if you're receiving Social Security disability benefits or a childhood disability benefit, after that 36-month review ends, and if you are over SGA, your cash benefits will terminate. So after the extended period of eligibility ends, 36 months, and on the 37th month, if you're over SGA, your disability benefits will terminate. So what happens with your Medicare coverage? Your Medicare coverage will continue in this instance for 93 months without issue. You will lose that cash benefit payment if you are over SGA after the 36-month extended period of eligibility. Again, the extended period of eligibility, you're either receiving or not receiving. After that ends, if you're working at SGA, Social Security is deeming you to be working at substantial gainful levels, you are going to lose that cash benefit. When you're in the extended period of eligibility, the goal is then to get to Social Security to count as little of your earned income as possible. And so we want to reduce the countable income. Child work period months and extended period of eligibility happens automatically. It's built in. It's the fail safe. It's to kind of gradually get you to that review. It's not immediate termination of benefit. But what you can do is get Social Security to count as little of your earned income as possible to get you below SGA. So how can they do that? Well, they can do that through impairment related work expenses or IRWEs. So these are out-of-pocket expenses that you would pay out of pocket related to your disability and the need to work. And these are deducted from your earnings. So Social Securities will use these as a deduction that gets you below SGA and that SGA determination. And this is used to determine your countable income when your earnings are over SGA. So if you're over SGA and your out-of-pocket expenses, which we're going to review a couple examples of that shortly here, are over, can get you down below SGA ongoing, then you don't need to worry about being over SGA. You're under with these impairment related work expenses. So you start looking at these and kind of identifying these impairment related work expenses during the extended period of eligibility, because at that point in time, we're in the cessation period. We're not in termination period. If you're over, you don't receive it under, you're fine. But you want to kind of identify them then as you move out of that extended period of eligibility into the potential termination period. You'll have these impairment related work expenses identified and documented with Social Security, which they will then use to deduct off your gross income. They're always looking at gross income. You want them to count as little as that possible. And these ROEs are a way to do that. You can submit several ROEs to Social Security, but they're only going to use what they need to get you below SGA. If you have larger out-of-pocket expenses, you can spread that over 12 months instead of using it just for 1 month. So there are various options you can apply when you start submitting these out-of-pocket expenses. So what are these out-of-pocket expenses? So here is an example of some IRWEs. So I listed these. This is not an all-inclusive list. These are the most popular IRWEs. When it comes to IRWEs, it literally comes to how creative you can get. Nothing is really Social Security has to make that determination. They're going to have to tell you whether they approve it or not, but you can get kind of creative with these IRWEs. So some examples of out-of-pocket expenses. So again, you have to be paying out of pocket for these expenses to count as deductions, and they have to be related to your disability and working. So attendant care, if you're paying out of pocket for additional attendant care, what so your insurance or waiver is not covering, and you use attendant care to get ready for work, whatever you're paying in addition to that coverage is the IRWE. Transportation related to the impairment. Transportation gets a little bit tricky here because you want, if you're driving to work, Social Security has the expectation you got to get to work somehow. Where that comes into play is if you are taking an Uber because there's some medical reason you can't take the bus or you are no longer allowed to take public transportation and you have to Uber, that Uber expense then is an IRWE. So that weekly Uber expense, a monthly Uber expense counts as an IRWE that Social Security will disregard when looking at your gross income in SGA. And there's a couple more here, supportive employment services. Most of these are all out-of-pocket expenses. So there's medical equipment and devices, service animals, routine drugs and medical services, medication copays. This is a very popular one. So a medication copay, even though you might not immediately identify that related to disability working, you need medications to function throughout the day. So that in turn helps you function at work. So medication copay is an IRWE deduction. So if you have out-of-pocket expenses for that, you can use that as a deduction for an IRWE through Social Security. There's residential modifications and work-related equipment and assistance. Again, this is just a brief example of this. You won't know until you apply it to Social Security. They will then tell you if it counts as an out-of-pocket expense. A lot of these, the out-of-pocket expense comes in addition to services that may be covered through other means. But if you are paying out-of-pocket in addition to a particular service, that counts as an IRWE. So attendant care, supported employment services, those are examples of out-of-pocket in addition to what is covered. Then you can use that as an IRWE. So let's just say hypothetically you hit that termination period, you apply those IRWEs, but you are not eligible to continue receiving your Title II benefit. You're just over SGA. The IRWEs and you're at that period now where the IRWEs are enough, they're not substantial enough to get you below the SGA amount. What can happen? So your benefit is terminated. You could be reevaluated for your disability benefit without the need for a new application. So there is some criteria with this. So you lose your Title II benefit after the extended period of eligibility due to your earnings, so your wages were above SGA. Within 5 years of losing that benefit payment, you can onboard onto disability benefits again, but you have to drop below SGA again. And the caveat here is when you drop below SGA again, it has to be related to your medical condition or impairment on record. So it has to be related to your medical condition or impairment that initially got you the Social Security benefit payment to begin with. So if you're working substantially, you're over SGA, there's no IRWEs that are getting below the SGA amount, you're just over and you're continuing to get an increase in pay, increase in hours or promotion. You lost that benefit, but something happens within a 5-year period after that termination where you're now below SGA again. You can onboard back onto that benefit without a reapplication. It's considered a specialized review. So Social Security will then see that you were below SGA and then kind of review you for the benefit again. Now, when they review you for this benefit, you can receive provisional benefits up to 6 months while they make that consideration. So in this case, you can get automatic Social Security disability payments again, but what occurs is that you won't have to pay that back if they decide against it. So if you're receiving your provisional benefits, and they decide at month number 6, you know what, you're not meeting this criteria, we're going to stop these benefits. That's not a payback. You don't have to pay back those provisional benefits. But the idea here is that you can jump back onto these disability benefits after you are terminated through what they call an expedited reinstatement of benefits. So this is kind of like an emergency review. I dropped below SGA due to my medical condition or my impairment on record. I'm not going to be able to work as much as I was. Can I be reviewed for this disability benefit again? You may still continue to be employed or not during that time, but regardless, you're now below SGA, and you can be reviewed to jump back onto that benefit. So that's kind of a review of the Social Security Disability Title II benefits, work incentives that are kind of built in already. We're going to talk about supplemental security income benefits now. So this is SSI. So this is the Title 16 benefits. This has its own set of work incentives. This also has its own set of work incentives that are automatically built in, like the Social Security benefits or disability benefits with the child work periods. There are also built-in incentives here. So before we get into the incentives, we're going to look at what the benefit is. So what is supplemental security income, or SSI? SSI is a government program that provides cash and medical assistance benefits to individuals meeting specific criteria. So that includes age, where you must be 65 and older. You can have a permanent disability, but you got to meet that Social Security disability criteria, that definition, or blindness, and that's statutory blindness. This is Social Security's acuity test here. And I'll read that out loud for everyone. So the acuity test for Social Security can continue to consider blind for these benefits is less than or equal to 20/200 in the better eye with the use of a corrective lens, or the field of vision is less than 20 degrees. So what I did is throughout the presentation, I put the PALMS references there. You can just Google that, cut and paste that. We'll share this presentation with everyone, and you can see these items in the Social Security handbook. So Social Security or Supplemental Security Income, SSI, needs-based benefit. It is based on chronic disability and low income. It's not an entitlement benefit. It's the last benefit that you could be reviewed for when you apply for Social Security benefits. It's a payer of last resort. You're not eligible for the entitlement benefits through Social Security disability. You're not eligible to pay, collect off a parent benefit through childhood disability benefits. So SSI would be the next one that they review you for. It's needs-based and it's based on low income. So the extent of coverage for SSI in 2025 is the federal benefit rate is $967 a month for an individual. So that is the total amount that an individual can receive on SSI for 2025. The rate for couples is $1,450 a month. And the rate, I apologize, that should be 2025, 1/3 reduction is 624. So that's the in-kind support and maintenance reduction. So if you're over 18 and living at home with mom and dad and not contributing towards household expenses, that's when you get the in-kind support and maintenance reduction. So they will reduce your benefit up to 1/3 if you are not contributing to household expenses while you're living at home over 18 with mom and dad. So it's important to have a room and board contract on file or be contributing toward household expenses in some way, shape, or form. Otherwise, Social Security is going to reduce you ongoing 1/3, and that will be your benefit payment. Instead of the 967, you'll be around that 624. SSI also comes with a state supplement payment. This is just the state's way of accounting for variations of cost of living. In the state of Pennsylvania, this is $22.10 a month for an individual and $33.10 a month for a couple. So you get that in addition to your $967 a month for SSI. So supplemental security income is a means-tested benefit. It has strict asset and income guidelines to initially qualify for and maintain the benefit ongoing. So unlike Social Security disability, where there is no resource test, this is a means-tested benefit. They are going to look at your income and assets. So the resource limit to qualify for Social Security or for supplemental security income for an individual is $2,000 and for a couple is $3,000. So I listed here that a beneficiary must have all of the following for it to count as a resource, and that's an ownership interest in the property, a legal right to access the property, and a legal ability to use the property for personal support and maintenance. So if that's the case, Social Security considers that an available resource. That includes checking and savings account, rep payee accounts, bonds, CDs, stocks, some pension plans, retirement plans, etc. You can have a home and a vehicle and a irrevocable burial reserve without it count. It's an excluded resource. It won't count towards your SSI eligibility. But the rule of thumb, you got to remain under that $2,000 resource cap to maintain the benefit. The resource cap has been in place since the 70s. There is, a growing, need to review this again and kind of hopefully get a higher resource limit. But right now we're at 2,000 and that's what they're going by. This can be, in this case, if you are receiving supplemental security income, this could be a chance if these accounts are over $2,000 or you're pushing that $2,000. That's when you can look at, potentially reviewing eligibility for a special needs trust, a pooled account, or a PA-able account and achieving a better life experience. So those accounts you can shelter assets in where they won't count against your eligibility. So if you are at this $2,000 resource limit or over, then there's that potential to shelter within those two options I said. We can review those in greater detail during a Q&A, but for right now, that is an option, to shelter resources where it won't count against your eligibility for SSI. Now, income limits includes both earned and unearned income. So SSI is looking at all income. When we were talking about SGA for Social Security disability, they were only looking at earned income. SSI is reduced based on what other income is in the picture. So the income types that Social Security is looking at in returns for SSI eligibility is unearned income. So that's all income that is not earned from one's job or business. And this includes other Social Security disability benefits, pensions, annuities, or unemployment benefits. Earned income, so any employment income is going to reduce your SSI benefit. So employment income is income received through personal effort. Deemed income, so this is income deemed from a parent to a child or spousal deeming. If the minor is under 18 and they are receiving SSI, Social Security is not looking at their own record. They are looking at mom and dad's income and resources. So income is deemed. They have their own special equation if a child is receiving SSI. So they're looking at mom and dad's income and resources then. and they have a special equation that they apply to determine whether or not the child then qualifies for SSI. Or spousal deeming. If you are married and your husband or wife are working, then their income is going to impact your SSI payment. Spousal deeming. If you're married, that spouse's income is going to impact and potentially lower your benefit amount. Then there's that in-kind support and maintenance reduction we talked about. They consider that unearned income received in the form of shelter assistance. So if you're over 18 and you're receiving SSI and you're living at home and not contributing towards household expenses, and you are not paying a room and board amount, then this could potentially be an issue with the in-kind support reduction, which will be a third of the benefit. So those are the incomes. So Social Security is looking at everything with SSI eligibility. So like Social Security Title II benefits, Title 16 benefits has its work incentives. Some are automatically built in, and some are we have to identify and apply later. But the point being is that you can work and receive SSI benefits. You can work and have a balance. You can receive SSI payments and continue to get that earned income a month. So these exclusions that we're going to review here are ways that Social Security kind of helps assist with that work process. And then in addition to, you can apply other ones if they meet your specific circumstances. So there's ones that are automatically applied and ones that you apply in addition to the automatically applied benefits. So Social Security, in terms of SSI, is looking at all income. They're looking at both earned and unearned income, but they're not going to count all that income. So when they're looking, you're submitting your wages each month to Social Security, and they're reviewing your wages, and they're going to determine what your SSI payment is going to be. There are two exclusions that are automatically applied. This happens regardless. You don't have to prompt Social Security to do it. They do it automatically, and that is the general income exclusion or the unearned income exclusion. So the general income exclusion is for any unearned income that's in the picture. So if you are an SSI recipient and you're receiving another benefit or receiving a pension, if you're receiving Social Security disability benefit in addition to your SSI, they're going to disregard $20 of that. They're not going to count it. Yes, it's low. It's not as generous as the earned income exclusion, but it's a $20 exclusion that they will automatically apply each time when there is unearned income in the picture. The earned income exclusion is much more generous. This is an important work incentive here. So the unearned income exclusion is that they will exclude $65 of that earned income or that employment income. They're looking at gross wages, but they're not going to count the first 65. And then they're going to divide that by 2. So when they divide that by 2, that is the amount that they are going to determine your SSI payment from. So there is that exclusion of 65, divide by 2, the remaining balance of that gross income is what they're going to use to determine your SSI payment. If you don't have unearned income, that $20 exclusion drops down to the earned income exclusion. So it's an $85 exclusion applied to any wages that you have, and then they divide that by 2. So here's an example of a general and earned income exclusion. So in this example, Sarah is an SSI recipient receiving $967 a month in SSI benefits. $967 a month is the total amount of benefits an individual can receive in 2025, the full federal benefit rate amount. She begins working at Target part-time, and she's earning $800 a month. So remember, Social Security is looking at gross amounts, so $800 a month gross before taxes. So Social Security is not going to count all of that $800 against Sarah's ongoing SSI payment. They're going to apply exclusions to that gross income to determine what Sarah's countable income is. They always want to get to that countable income. So even though it's $800, these automatic exclusions are going to limit or lower that amount. So in this case, there's no unearned income in the picture. So Sarah's going to get a reduction or an exclusion of $85 automatically applied, reducing her countable income to $715. So she's already gone from $800 gross income to $715. But that's just the first part of the earned income exclusion, because then Social Security is going to divide that remaining $715 by 2, and that's going to give them $357.50. That is the amount that Social Security will use to determine Sarah's SSI payment. So as you can see, the earned income exclusion could be pretty generous. It's it's an important work incentive here that is automatically applied, where they are deducting, up to $85 and then dividing that by 2. So in this case, Sarah's SSI payment amount would change to $609.50. So how they get that is they take that full benefit rate she was initially entitled to, that $967, and subtract $357.50, which is her countable earned income after deductions, to get her benefit amount. So instead of $967, Sarah then receives $609.50 in SSI. So the idea here is this helps maximize Sarah's monthly financial outcome. So she's not only receiving $800 from employment income, but she's receiving the adjusted SSI amount of $609, which gives her much more money to work with in the month than if she was just receiving that $967. So that's something to take into consideration. Even though you are having your SSI lowered, you also have this earned income in the picture now you're receiving. So together it maximizes your financial monthly outcome. So this kind of breaks down the general and earned income exclusions. So again, $800 employment or earned income. The general income exclusion is applied. She doesn't have any unearned income to apply it to. That gives $780. You subtract the earned income exclusion, get that $715 divided by 2, and that is the countable earned income that SSI will count against Sarah's payment. So I kind of broke down the equation below. $609.50 is what Sarah would receive based on $800 gross through SSI. Now, another important work incentive here that is often overlooked is the Student Earned Income Exclusion work incentive. So this one, a lot of individuals don't even know this exists. And so this is for students who are working and receiving SSI. So that's the key. They have to be working and receiving SSI. And it allows a really generous amount of monthly and annual income to be excluded when determining their SSI amount. So this is applied even before they do that earned income exclusion. So you can match you could be at zero countable income depending on what you're earning. So it's something you got to identify. So you have to have Social Security kind of identify. It's not automatic like the general and earned income exclusion is, but it allows that SSI recipient who is working and in school to exclude up to $2,350 a month, up to $9,460 a year. So up to $2,350 a month of your earned income can be forgiven if you are, receiving, SSI and you're working. So, and to qualify, the student must be under age 22 and regular attending school. So regular attending school to qualify for this work incentive, I kind of outlined it here. I also put the Palms reference in there. So it's a college or university for at least 8 hours a week, or grade 7 to 12 for at least 12 hours a week. And then I kind of broke it down by the training courses and homeschool situations. But they have to meet these guidelines in order to qualify for the Student Earned Income Exclusion, in addition to receiving SSI and working. So the school and university must provide the documentation. So again, Social Security is not going to automatically apply this one or flag you down to apply it. You have to contact them and let them know these are your specific circumstances. Again, once applied, it is a very generous work incentive where they apply it even before they do those automatic deductions. And to kind of give you an idea what that would look like here for that example that we used, Sarah with the $800 target income, the student earned income exclusion is applied immediately, even before they start doing that equation where they're, reducing it by $85 and dividing it by 2. She's getting it matched because the $800, she has up to $2,350 to use in that month, with a total of $9,460 for the year. So in this scenario, after excluding the $800, Sarah still has about $8,660 in that calendar year to apply for the student earned income exclusion. So if she continues to work at this rate, her countable income is going to be zero until she maxes out that $9,460. So this is a very powerful work incentive. And again, below it's a maximizing your monthly financial outcome, $800 earning income, plus the full federal benefit rate of $967, because Social Security is applying this incentive immediately. But again, the individual has to be able to identify the need for this, and you can do that through your benefits counseling team to apply this benefit. So impairment-related work expenses, we want Social Security to count as little as that earned income as possible. These are the same as they are with Title II, the same examples, but they're just applied in a different way. So for the Title II benefits, we were trying to get, the individual below SGA. We're trying to get them below that 1,620. In this case, for SSI purposes, we're using these ROEs, these out-of-pocket expenses, to reduce the countable income. So we're taking it off your gross amount to get your Social Security payment, potentially increased for the month as an incentive. So it's kind of applied in a different way. One, we're looking at getting you below SGA. Two, we're looking at reducing countable income, which is going to increase your SSI. One is all or nothing. This one's kind of like a fluctuation. And I gave the Palms reference there for examples of ROEs. SSI also offers blind work expenses, although otherwise known as BWEs. So this is for SSI beneficiaries with blindness as a primary diagnosis who are working. So these particular incentives, these work expenses, they are a little more generous than just regular IRWEs because they recoup 100% of the cost. So these are applied after the countable income is halved in that earned income exclusion calculation. So you, depending on what your ROEs are, you can recoup the full cost of that deduction. So you can get your full benefit amount for the month very easily. So it depends on where they apply it. So the difference between an IRWE and a BWE is you can use BWEs for not just, IRWEs are for disability related expenses that are tied to work. They're out of pocket. BWEs, they don't have to be tied to disability. They could be applied because it's a work expense. This includes transportation to and from work, so gas, taxi, Ubers. This includes taxes withheld from paychecks, union dues, etc. I put the Palms reference there, but the point is that the blind work expenses are a lot more generous than the regular ROEs are, and they will look at a lot more. It's not just a disability related expense tied to work. It is just a work expense in terms of blind work expenses here. So with supplemental security income and medical assistance, Pennsylvania is what they call a 1634 state. That means that Social Security, if you were in the state of Pennsylvania receiving Social Security, you automatically get Medicaid coverage. So individuals on SSI automatically meet the means test and needs-based service for medical assistance. They get it. Medical assistance, again, is the payer of last resort. If you have any other benefits in the picture, such as you're working and your employer provides insurance, that's your primary. Medical assistance and secondary. If you receive Medicaid, if you receive Medicaid or Medicare, Medicare is primary, medical assistance is secondary. Medical assistance is always payer of last resort. And this is a big, topic for individuals who are working. They sort of understand that SSI payment is going to fluctuate. The cash payment is going to fluctuate. Where the real concern comes in was that medical assistance coverage. So what happens if they work their way off of the SSI cash benefit? So they work the income they're pulling in even after exclusions, they're just at a zero. They're not qualifying for an SSI payment. They could then qualify for what we call 1619B medical coverage. So in this case, the individual is no longer receiving SSI cash payment due to earned income. Just even with exclusion, they're just not qualifying. They're coming out at zero. They're not qualifying for SSI payments anymore, but they could continue their medical coverage ongoing without issue if they continue to meet all other Social Security disability requirements. So in terms of SSI coverage or the Medicaid coverage that comes with SSI, they have to, as long as they remain under $2,000 in resources and continue to need the benefits for working and had just received a cash payment the month before, they will qualify for this ongoing 1619B medical coverage if they earn less than $52,000 a year. I come across individuals, a lot of individuals that are on this 1619B. So they no longer qualify for the cash benefit, but they're still qualified for SSI for other than the cash benefit. They're still meeting the disability requirement. They are still under $2,000 in resources. So they're still able to maintain the medical coverage that came with the SSI, even though they are not receiving the SSI cash benefit. So this is a kind of an important work incentive here. Social Security, I would like to say that they apply this automatically, but sometimes you might have to give them the nudge if you know you're going to be working so substantially that your SSI payment will be at zero. It kind of gives them an idea of to kind of review you for this benefit. So last couple slides here, transition ages, what happens when an individual turns 18 and they are receiving supplemental security income? Well, they have a redetermination. So if they're receiving SSI as a minor, they have a redetermination at 18. So they are reviewed again under the adult disability criteria, and parental deeming ends. So they are no longer, mom and dad's income is not impacting them. They are on their own review, their own budget. If they are living at home and they're over 18 and receiving supplemental security income, they will need to have a room and board contract on file, pay towards those expenses to avoid that 1/3 reduction. And so the final slide here is just reminders. If receiving disability benefits, report employment to the Social Security Administration. That is a verbal report. You don't want to just start submitting pay stubs. So you report it and then you submit the pay verification. Wages are to be reported to Social Security by the end of the following month. So each month by the end of the following month. So for February, wages, you want to report that by the 10th of March. So to avoid any overpayment issues. Retroactive monthly accounting applies. So in most cases, the accountable income received in one calendar month affects the SSI payment 2 calendar months later. So April's wages are reviewed in May and applied to the June's SSI payment. So you won't see, after you submit your pay verification, that impact on your SSI benefit for 2 months. And that is it. That was a kind of a crash course in some of those work incentives. So I apologize. That was a lot of information to cover in a half-an-hour time here. But if anybody has any questions, I'm going to stop sharing.
Thanks, Matt. And we do have some questions, and I'll go ahead and ask them of you.
Yeah.
And if you've already covered it, pardon me for that, in advance. And then we'll look for hand raise or to the Q&A. So
Okay.
we start here with how can trust support independent living expenses?
So special needs trust. So if you have a special needs trust and it's funded and you could apply that trust depending on your benefit. You can pay for, it's not to supplant government benefits, it's a supplement. You want it in addition to the services you're already receiving, but you can utilize trust benefits to pay for various items. You can use it for living expenses. You can pay rent, you can pay utilities out of a trust, but it depends on the benefit you're receiving. If you're receiving Social Security disability benefits, you can pay, there's a lot more flexibility what you can cover out of a trust fund. If you're receiving SSI, we can't pay shelter utility costs out of a trust, or that will penalize your payment. So they'll consider that unearned income, that in-kind support maintenance. So it really depends on the benefit, but there is flexibility and room to pay for, items that you need daily out of a trust. So that's what it's there for. You just want to kind of budget and ensure that you're looking at what your daily expenses, monthly expenses are out of a trust to make sure we're not supplanting any essential government benefits such as SSI, which is supposed to go towards your room and board. We don't want to pay that out of a trust because then that will be considered that unearned income. So there is a little bit of a variation of what we can do depending on the benefit, but ideally there's really an umbrella to disability related expenses. We can kind of cover anything out of the trust. PA Able is the same way. You can utilize that, the Achieving a Better Life Experience account. You can open one of those and there's a little more independence and flexibility with Able. For instance, out of a trust, and if you're on SSI, we can't do living shelter expenses. You can do that out of an Able without penalty. So you can have both accounts and kind of, work together with them to meet your needs. But Able has a lot more flexibility with what they will enable you to pay out without penalty. SSI recipients can pay shelter and utility costs out of Able without penalty. If they are receiving a trust, we kind of got to review what benefit they're receiving. But overall, you can pay for items out of a trust, but the idea is not to kind of pay for something that your waiver or something else is covering. It's in addition to.
Thanks, Matt. Next question. How much can you earn on SSDI and keep your MA benefits for your PFDS waiver?
So waiver is looking at, so if you're receiving Social Security disability insurance, waiver is looking at all income. Waiver is looking at unearned income and earned income. So that unearned income being your SSDI payment a month. And if you're working, waivers looking at that. They're combining the two, and you have to be under $2,901 a month in order to continue to qualify for those waiver services. Waiver has that income limit, $2,901 with a resource limit of $8,000. So that you can, if you are receiving Social Security disability benefits, you can work. You want to be mindful of that SGA we talked about, that 1,620 once you go through your child work period months. So you're going to have two things going on here. You're going to have the Social Security requirement, and you're going to have the DHS waiver requirement when it comes to that income. Social Security is looking at substantial gainful activity. DHS is looking at that Social Security disability income, and are looking at your earned income towards that waiver income cap. So there's kind of a balance that goes on there.
Thank you, Matt. Next question. How to be employed without affecting SSDI and setting up an account for funds? I think we've covered some of that, but anything to add?
So setting up the account for funds, I don't know if that's particular meaning like a rep payee account to manage the Social Security disability funds, or they're talking about like a special needs trust or an ABLE account, which is always an option when you are working and receiving disability benefits. Because again, Social Security disability doesn't have a resource limit, but you might be on another benefit that does, in this case, waiver or medical assistance. So having those tools to shelter resources into could be a good way, if you are receiving Social Security disability benefits and working, to kind of, maintain eligibility for the waiver services or the Medicaid services. So yeah, you can set up when you're receiving Social Security disability income, you can't shelter the income into trust. Trust shelter resource, not income. So Social Security income is income. They're going to count it regardless of what you do with it. So the following month it becomes a resource. So the key there is to shelter resources. If you have a means tested, benefit, that's what we're kind of looking at here.
We're trying to stump you, Matt, and it's just not working out for us. Thank you for all your answers so far. And here's the next one, a little bit more involved, a little more, directed at a personal situation. My son receives child support for life. His income he receives monthly at $1,058. Therefore, SSI cannot he cannot receive his SSI. They told me he can't get it back because it is unearned income. How can I get his SSI back, and how much can he work and still receive MED?
Yep. So that's a good question. So there's two things happening here. So that child support is considered unearned income to that individual receiving SSI, whether they are a minor or they are 18 and older and still receiving child support payments. We're looking at unearned income in the picture. Social Security is only going to disregard a fourth of that payment. So that whole payment's not going to count against them. The 1/4 of it will be excluded. So after that exclusion, if they are still over, if that unearned income is still not enabling them to receive an SSI cash payment, that's pretty much probably going to be the standard, unless the circumstances change. There's court-ordered child support, there's agreement child support, there's different variations at play here, but regardless, Social Security is going to disregard 1/4 of that payment, not count that, and then that remaining balance is going to count towards that individual's SSI payment. We do have certain circumstances where individuals receiving court-ordered child support payments go back to court and get that terminology to issue those payments into trust. So that becomes a little complicated because you're not owning that payment anymore. That goes to the trust. It won't count against that SSI eligibility, but the issue here is then now the trust is receiving that, and so you got to go through the rules of the trust to access the funds, where before you were just kind of spending those funds on what you needed. So there is a way to get the court to appoint payments to trust. That involves another court process, but the individual that asked this question, if they would reach out to me one-on-one, I could go into greater detail about this due to the time. But and the work incentive pieces, we explain, you can work and receive SSI, that earned income. There are work incentives available, and I can break that down with them one-on-one.
Thanks for that, Matt. Matt's email contact is in the chat, so hopefully you all see that, as well as Leanne Felina Amber Westwood, who I work with directly with the Invest project. Her name, contact information is in the chat, as well as me, Jack Butler. I'm the Invest team facilitator, director of person-centered supports at Achieva. And then I also have the Invest site, through OVR that you can connect with. So we have a question straight from the city of the current Super Bowl champions, Philadelphia. So Philadelphia schools do not have reading materials and tools for students who are blind. Period products. Please share the recording, since I will be assisting someone at this time. We can do that, right, Matt? That won't be a problem. And then we are debating whether to keep him in school past normal graduation and have him work part-time. How does this affect his benefits? Does independent contractors' work affect him?
So this depends on the age of the individual and the benefits received. But depending on the benefit, any income, like if they're receiving SSI, any income in that received is going to impact that SSI payment. So yes, they can work part-time. And if they were talking about extending their graduation date, I think, Jack, or something along those lines, and that's something that the treatment team should look at together in terms. But if that's the case and they are still in school and receiving a benefit, so in this case SSI, then we can kind of look at those SSI work incentives. In that case, being that student earned income exclusion benefit, that very generous one, which would apply to this individual if they were working receiving SSI. But it really depends on the benefit they're receiving, because if they're not receiving SSI and are just receiving waiver services, then we're looking at that earned income. We got to be mindful of that waiver cap or the Medicaid cap or whatever other service they're receiving. So there's like I said, two kind of things going on here: the Social Security expectations and work requirements, and then we got these other benefits coming into the picture as well, with our own set of income and resource limits. It's a lot of information to juggle. But if I knew specifically, again, if that individual reaches out personally, I can kind of guide them through that one-on-one, and that way I can get some more information. I don't want to keep answering on hypothetical there, but
Yeah, it's a good point. Part of my relationship with Matt, at Achieve as coworkers, Matt comes in on a lot of our person-centered planning meetings, and really handles those direct questions individually, and then spins off at times. And through Invest, it's a similar relationship, right, Matt? Bringing into those conversations, and they get that individual one-on-one attention. A little bit of feedback, that people are real thankful for these valuable resources. I think we have time for one more question. There's two more, actually. Can the CDB, client receive Medicaid to cover group home living?
And that's a good question. That's a different, I have to pull in some additional resources for that one. Yeah, they can receive Medicaid coverage if they're a CDB client, just as a secondary coverage to their Medicare once they become eligible for Medicare. But in terms of the group home coverage, I'd have to get a little bit more. That's kind of out of my area of expertise here, but I can get that information. Again, that individual reach out to me. We can pull in whoever we need to answer that question. But depending on the group home, depends on the type of payments they receive. We have Medicaid beds, Social Security beds, it's private pay. So there's a lot of things that come into play, but you can have Medicaid and have a childhood disability benefit. But if you're looking at, Medicaid in terms of coverage for residential placement, I think that's a little bit more of a complexity.
Matt, if I could jump in there, you're starting to get into waiver questions too there. So, yeah, I would encourage that person also to contact us directly.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a good prompt and cue, Leanne. Thank you for that. Just kind of wrap up, today's session. We want to thank Matt,
You're
Achieve
welcome.
Family Trust, definitely the Invest team, Leanne, Cal and Chris, for providing the platform. All of you, for your participation, your questions, were awesome. And, we are recording this. So, we look forward to getting this into the hands of people, that, may benefit from this. So, we'll look forward to your emails, questions, and, encourage, anyone who is in jeopardy of, a being placed at a 14C or is currently being supported, where there is a 14C present and, wants competitive integrated employment and, they have questions, maybe they relate to benefits or they relate to risk, or, they relate to accessibility, that's all part of the wraparound support that we provide through Invest. I want to be mindful of time. We are at 12:15 and, I'm going to say goodbye for now and look forward to you participating in our speakers series moving forward. Thank you.
Thanks.